All right, we're going to talk right now about how to prep our paper in order to create Mandela art. So this is what we're going to create, but first you have to prepare your paper, and that is an extremely important part before you start. We need our paper to look like this, perfectly evenly divided circle, okay? And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So the first thing that we need to do is create a square in our paper. And you could measure any square, but we want the largest amount of square that we can get. So what I do, this is my makeshift straight edge. I'm going to erase all my previous marks off of it because I make little marks for my measurements. You can use a ruler. But for those that don't have one, you can just fold a piece of paper. This is literally just a piece of paper folded in half long ways and in half again. Okay, and it's just as easy, I think. But basically, I take it and I line it up perfectly along the top edge and the side edge. And then when I come down to the end of my paper, I make a little mark. Okay, so that is the length of my one side of my square. Now you could make your square to one side, but then our mandala wouldn't be centered. So what I do is try to eyeball center, and I make two little marks on my paper. And of course you can measure out your sides. Make these a little darker. You could measure out your sides and come in the same amount of distance. There's many ways you can do it. If I want to double check that I am in fact centered, I'll make a little mark on my straight edge of how much distance I have on this side, and I'll compare it to this side. And I'm a little off, so I basically want to scooch my lines about that much. So I'll scooch that line, and I'll scooch this line, and now I'm centered. Okay, so I have my marks, and now I will, again, when I'm lining this up, making sure this edge is perfectly straight is what makes sure this line is perfectly straight. And this is super important. It's very important to be precise when preparing your paper for this project. So I'm lining this up nice and straight, again, making sure it's perfectly up and down. So now this portion of my paper is a perfect square. So my next step is to do an X from corner to corner, okay? My folded paper isn't quite long enough, so you'll have to find something. I have this piece of cardboard that's cut straight, or you can use a ruler or whatever, but that's the hardest. The longest stretch is right here. And I line up the corner of my square and the corner of my square perfectly. Again, precision is key on this. So line up the other corner, this corner, and we run our line, okay, and we have a perfect X. Our next step is to use the center of this X, because this is the absolute center of our square, and we're going to use that as a reference point to make a plus sign across, okay? And again, I will take my straight edge, and I'll switch back to my paper here, just because I feel like everyone can fold a piece of paper. Okay, and I'll line this up perfectly along the top, and that ensures my line is straight up and down. And my second point is this middle point of the X. And again, be very precise when you're doing this, okay? And create your plus. And again, I'm going to line up perfectly on this edge of my paper and slide my straight edge down until it's perfectly lined up with the center of this X. I'm going to run my line across. Okay. Now here we're going to create a circle. Okay. And you're going to use this nifty tool here that we've made. And I'm using a paper clip. You could use a pen, anything that will help you hold. And I'm lining this up perfectly on this very center, okay? And I'm gonna wanna hold it there. This is probably one of the hardest parts. And then whatever, like if I use this dot to do my circle, it's gonna go off my paper, right? So the largest circle you can make staying inside your square. And for me, that's this. And I'm holding my paper with my wrist here. So now I gotta raise up and I'm placing my finger down to keep it stationary and coming on around. And now I have a perfect circle, okay? All right, so from here, now we want to divide each of our sections of our circle in half. So the way that we go about that is we measure from this point to this point, straight across, okay? So we come in. If you want to draw a little line, you can. I'm going to show you that this is the measurement. We want half of that, okay? So when I come in and I line up the corner of my straight edge, and then I make a mark right at the corner of the other spot. Okay, now I take my straight edge and I'm going to fold the end to touch that mark. So I can get this to not overexpose. So there's my mark. I'm folding it perfectly. Okay. Now, when I open it, this fold is the halfway spot. And I'm going to put a little line right there. So there's the full length. Here's our middle spot. And now I'm going to put this back on our line. There we go. And I'm going to put a little line there. Okay, so that is now the middle of this section. So if I use this dot and the very center of my circle as my two points to line up my straight edge, then it'll not only cut this section in half, but its opposite section in half as well. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We'll run our line all the way across. And now these two sections have been cut in half. So we want to, we're going to have to measure half of all the sections. So this one, and this one, and then it'll run across to its opposing sides. Okay, so I'm lining up to the very corner, and you can see where my marks, there we go, my marks line up perfectly. Here's my center mark. I'll make that little line there, and now I have that point and this point for that section. We've done this section. I'm going to measure this one from this corner to this corner, center. Okay, this section we're going to go from this corner to this corner. All right, so all the sections on the top half are now marked, and those will divide all the way down to the other opposing section. Okay, so line up that point and this point perfectly, and we put in our line all the way across, and now both of these are divided. And then we'll come to this one and do the same. And now this section. I'm lining up here and here, my 2 points. Okay, so everything's been divided in half. Now we want to divide every section in half one more time, okay? So again, I take my half line and I'm going to have to measure the half point on all of these sections, okay? Now, I've already got, if you'll see, I've already got my half point marked from the last time. Might be just a tiny bit off as we come up, so I can scooch it just a little bit. Okay, make sure it's nice and precise, because the more precise it is, the better your project will turn out. Okay, so we've measured that. See, and now it's from that corner to that corner. So see, now we're measuring just this section. Or if you were to do it on one that doesn't have a mark yet, that's the section we're measuring, okay? So now there's my line. I'm going to fold this edge to that line, crease it. That is now my halfway. Okay, so when I line up my edge and this mark becomes my middle point. And I'm going to need to go from on every section and mark my middle point, every single section, okay? We did this one. We're going to do this one and this one. All the way around to our halfway point. If you get to a section, because every now and then you might get off a little, and you may get to a section where it's not quite long enough or a little too long, try to divide the difference so you're still in the middle. If it's too significant, then you might need to make some corrections. But okay, so here's our halfway line and everything above it is marked, okay? So line our straight edge up to this reference point and the very center. And the more accurate we get our center, the better. Again, this whole project is about accuracy. So I've lined up my reference mark and my center. And I add another line all the way through. Reference mark, center, reference mark, center. There's my other reference, center, and we're going to continue all the way through. Now I have them down to one more. So I can tell I got these big sections. That's okay. On my reference mark and my center. And now I've got my whole circle prepared to start my mandala. And I can come in, and I can erase these reference lines that I made across, like these. You don't need those for the art. And then if you've erased pieces, just kind of put them back in. And that's it. Now we need to add in all of our circles all the way. We're going to do small, slowly increasing larger out. so that we have perfect circles all the way out. So again, we're going to use this cool nifty tool. Whatever you're using, your pen, tack, whatever, to hold your tool centered. And this is, to me, the hardest part, being able to hold your paper and everything's steady. And then we're going to start with our closest hole, and we're going to create our circle. And then we're going to come out to our second hole and create our circle. And you can't move the middle of your tool while you're doing this, or your circles will get off. So you can see I'm starting to get them. My tool moved, so I'm going to realign it. I think it might help. One of the tricks I might suggest would be maybe slightly tape down your paper, your main paper, something like that. That might help. And keep going out. Uh-oh. Mine got off, I can tell right here. So I gotta get back on center perfectly and then kind of redo that until it lines back up again, okay? And then I'll come back out and okay. Relining up. And our last one. Uh-oh, I moved for sure, I can tell. So we got to reline up. Okay, so that one I will need to go through and erase a little bit where it's slightly off. And I see that it crosses, so I'm going to come over here. I'm erasing the top outer one. So I can kind of clean it up. And if you get confused, erase the whole circle and do it again. See, I see this one's kind of messed up. Let's erase that off. Just cleaning up circles here.